going to another issue that is, again, tangential to both of these, related more to your crime and safety, which is the Second Amendment and gun control. Especially here in the Los Angeles area, there are certain zip codes that have very high crime rates and a lot of gun violence. And as your colleague pointed out, we are one of the worst states when it comes to gun violence, even though we have one of the strictest gun control programs in the country. So what's your position on the Second Amendment? Just in general, I'll let you state that.
I'm constitutional carry.
Okay.
There are a couple of my cities in the district that as the sun goes down, the crime goes up. And there are a lot of times when, I've been confronted a number of times. Fortunately, I've only had a couple of incidents that I was able to control. So I was able to pretty much walk away from. But I am, to me, the Constitution is very clear. Okay, they don't talk about, we're not talking about muskets, where in general is that people have the right to protect themselves. And I'm a big believer in it.
And all of this legislation that California is putting in place, which seems to be attempting to just make the process more expensive and more difficult, you seem to disagree strongly with. You had talked about the new cost of registration. They're trying to pass laws that will require you to basically pay $100 to $200 per year just to maintain the firearm after you purchased it. I saw that you had also talked about the new 11% excise tax that was put on all firearms.
On all firearms. I have firearms. And so do most of my children. All of us have firearms. But with being able to, and I've been in other states, in Arizona, I know where it is constitutional carry there. And I felt comfortable. I didn't have a problem with that. And as Mario said, if people understand that you have a weapon and you have the training, which is, to me, training is must be. You need to understand the weapon that you have. And there have been videos out there, they're very graphic, where some kid is playing with a weapon and he ends up shooting himself in the head. But I honestly believe that the only way to solve that problem is to have constitutional carry.
Okay. With training.
With training.
Okay. So let's go and do a couple of the other more specific laws. So one, you just mentioned that a lot of times children can get a hold of these and with severe consequences. And one of the laws that was just recently signed in California was a safe storage law. And I don't know the exact details of it, but I do know that it's effectively, if your firearm is not on you or in safe storage and there's another individual around who's not versed with the gun, then you could be held criminally liable. So where do you draw the line to make sure that kids don't have severe consequences and mishandling something like this versus just being allowed to be free and protecting the Second Amendment?
With children, the children are going to be curious. So Mario brought part of that also, whereas I taught all my children, weapon, always, you have to respect the weapon. Assume that it's always loaded, always. If you take away the mystery, if you take away the cowboys and Indians type of things, a child is not going to bother that weapon. But then you have the other side of it where you have a child who has anger issues and things like this. That I do take the parent responsible for that. If you know that you have a child who, or a young adult who has issues or who's being bullied or being picked on or whatever that might be, you are the responsible individual who should make sure that that weapon has a lock on it to where it cannot be touched.
Okay, so leaving the authority and responsibility at the parents' level.
Parents' level.
And so then I'll ask you this. Do you agree with the Trump assassin, the first attempted assassination? That individual clearly had mental health problems. The parents knew that something was wrong that day and were calling into law enforcement. And I believe the father is being held liable for the actions. So you agree that there should be some kind of responsibility or even liability with the parent if they mismanage the situation with their child.
I do. I mean, you have to take the responsibility for your child if you allow your child, and you knowingly, and this individual knew that their child had problems.
Okay.
And instead of taking that weapon and making sure, he takes him and just openly allows him to have access to that weapon.
Sure. And if you know your child has problems, instead of red flag laws, which would basically allow the government or the state to somehow monitor and red flag certain individuals that may be a danger to themselves and others, would you be in favor of that kind of intervention, or still leave that at the parent level and just put the liability on the parents and say, parents, you're liable for these kind of situations if they happen, and then leave the government out of it?
I prefer the government out of it. I haven't yet to see anywhere where the government being involved has done anything correctly. So it literally comes down to the parent.
Okay.
I don't believe in the red flag law.
Okay.
As Mario brought up, if you're going through a divorce or your neighbor's angry at you and they're going to pick up the phone and say, Paul Jones has got weapons and he's radical and he's this, and no, I don't believe in that.